Well, hello. We are talking about mushrooms today. I don't know if you've watched my latest podcast video, The Paradigm Shift. I was actually interviewed on The Paradigm Shift for mushroom therapy, energy work, and just witches, witchcraft in general, as well as alchemy. We talked about a lot of different things, a lot of topics, but mushroom really seemed to be the main topic for the video. So I would definitely suggest watching that video before you actually finish this one. But honestly, you don't really have to watch them in order. I just like to give you guys a little general idea of what I'm talking about before we get into deeper details. So now, to get started, I want to give you a little bit of a background story because I was actually, and this is before I actually realized I had epilepsy, and I'm still unsure of what actually triggers my epilepsy besides stress, obviously, and anxiety, and some other things, some other deeper issues. But I was working in Portland, Oregon for this company. Now, I won't really disclose the name just because I don't know, I'd like to keep some of my information a little bit personal. But we were campaigning up in Portland, Oregon, which is one of the first states that actually legalized this type of research. MAPS is let me look this because I just multi multi disciplinary association for psychedelic studies. I don't know why that one's such a mouthful, but it is. Sorry. So, multidisciplinary association for psychedelic studies. So this is a general concept for psychedelic therapy. So there's psychedelics and then there's also therapy involved as well. So it's not like you're just taking mushrooms, taking MDMA, taking all these psychedelic drugs, and then you're just healed. That's not what happens. I'm sorry. Now, I want you to also know I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to give you any advice, any medical advice. So please, disclaimer, this is not medical advice. This is just my personal story, what I went through, my background is, and where I'm going with this. I will get into detail with that eventually soon. So again, I worked up in Portland, Oregon when I was a few years back, 2019, before all this COVID. I said the C word. The COVID controversy started. I was up in Portland, Oregon, and I was campaigning out in the streets, out in the rain, out in the cold, talking to people and getting them interested in MAPS and decriminalizing drug use and providing homes for people who are known drug users. So that is a separate thing, but those were the two campaigns that I was working on. So I do feel like I have a little bit of basic knowledge on what MAPS is. Now, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not an expert, I'm not a medical expert, once again, but I do have a general idea of what these studies are and what it actually is providing to the United States and across seas, because there are other countries that are involved in this type of research as well. Now, there are still a lot of, because this is new, this is very new, this is something I really want you to understand. So there's not a whole lot of information that you're going to find. Like, you're going to have to go out of your way to look for this research. Main media companies, they are still lobbied by the pharmaceutical companies. My cat's scratching at the door. Hopefully you can't hear that. But so there's a lot of freshness to this type of research, to these type of studies, and what its actual background is a little controversial for a lot of people because they think, oh well, it's psychedelic drugs. Now, there's a religious type of thing behind that, and a lot of with the controversy, but there's a lot of things that we should really understand because MDMA, I don't believe, yeah, that's not a natural drug. It's a man-made drug, and some of these things are man-made hallucinogens, but it allows you to really go deeper within your own consciousness. And so that's why I really believe that some of the therapy involved, because again, it's not just the psychedelics, it's the therapy involved as well. So it allows you to go and either relive experiences. So this is why big disclaimer, be very careful with this type of like personal research because I do not condone it. It is very difficult to do on your own. You want a loved one involved. You want somebody to know what you are doing, what you're taking, because some of these things can actually trigger epilepsy. From my understanding, that personally was not my story, but I do know that there are some things online. So I would definitely recommend doing your own personal research. Do some extensive research too, because again, this stuff is new, it is fresh. there's medical research, and then there's individual research. Go through like Reddit forums, look for individual perspectives, and then base your own judgment on this sort of thing, because you can do this on your own legally. That's controversial on its own, because I have a whole blog and article. I definitely recommend you checking it out. Now, that information is available on my website at spiritual.online. If you go through my blog articles, I have one for psychedelic therapy, mushroom involved therapy, and then I have one for mushroom tea, which is the mushroom tea experience, my personal experience. That's my blog relating to the information that I went through, all the research that I went through on a personal basis. So it's not like medical research, it's personal research. So now I'll get into deeper details of why I actually did this myself, because I do have a background of epilepsy. I back in like 2019, I believe it was actually 2020, like the beginning of 2020, I actually fell on my face. I have a little scar. It's hard to see in this camera, but I have a scar, and I almost bit my tongue off. So there was a big impact in my life from this experience, and I ended up on my face. My dad thankfully found me. I was unconscious, purple from lack of oxygen, because again I fell on my face. My tongue was bleeding, my hand was bleeding. I'm not really quite sure what I cut my hand on, but I cut my hand on something from falling. That's what happens. You basically go unconscious, and you start convulsing and spazzing out. Now, it's different from person to person, because there's different types of seizures. Like there's something called aura seizures, which you usually get in along with regular seizures. Well, I guess I shouldn't say regular seizures. It's not the medical term, but you get aura seizures along with your other seizures. So it's kind of something that happens afterwards. So it's like more of a you not, I shouldn't say euphoric, but you get like little like eerie and dizzy, or you're just kind of out of it. You don't know where you are. You're not familiar with names. Your memory is really bad, and you lose actual motor cognition. Like it's hard for you to, like, it depends on what limb is affected. I'm sure whatever happens in your brain energetically. Um but I had lost a lot of like motion in my hands as well, so it was really difficult for me to like move my hand around. I actually bought a brace for my own arm, so I could like not fall asleep on it and let it go to sleep underneath me, because I had this problem of like sleeping on my arm. And now I thought for a long time that was, I think it was like, both. I think it was a part of my aura seizures, my regular seizures, and then also just sleeping on my arm. I think it was like a mix of all of those things, and why I really lost control and like function ability inside of my arm. Now I won't say that it was like completely lost, but it was very difficult for me to like close my hand and do like regular functions, which is really strange and bizarre. But I had a lot of things that happened in such a short amount of time, and it was really actually difficult for me to remember these things. I wasn't even aware that I had seizures for a long time, because my memory was so bad. It was so difficult for me to remember these things. And so it just became a perpetual loop of me having more seizures because of the anxiety, the PTSD, and the other things that were involved from me having seizures. So it became a toxic loop, right? It became a repetitive toxic cycle. And so I had finally I've had two, I think three major seizures that actually ended me up in the hospital. The first one, obviously, when I was on my face, ended up in the hospital. And they basically just released me. They didn't do any type of neurological exam. I really have no idea why. Maybe the hospitals were just filled with COVID stuff, and so I didn't get the medical help that I needed back then in Albuquerque. Was where it happened. And so, I moved from state to state, and eventually I moved out here to Texas. We have a much bigger hospitals, much more neurological surgeons. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe there weren't enough neurological surgeons out in New Mexico. I'm not really sure. But, I didn't really get the help and the medical help I really needed. So, I won't say that I'm, against medical examination or pharmaceutical companies, but there is a lot of controversy with that, because their main focus is really to get you on some type of pharmaceutical drug and basically attach you to a system. The main concern for a lot of doctors, not all doctors, I'm not disowning the medical aspect of what happened to me, the medical conditions probably could have been helped by a lot of drugs. Because I know that I was eventually, after like 3 seizures, 3 times happening in the hospital, they finally, I was able to see a neurosurgeon, and they did an MRI. I didn't really look at my CAT scan. They never provided me with that type of information for some reason. I guess they just don't really show you that type of information anymore or something like that. I don't know. But I didn't get the information that I was looking for. I didn't get the help I was looking for and really needed. And I had brought up CBD. I had brought up CBD because I knew that it was actually something that it was used for epilepsy and other types of mental disorders and mental problems. So I brought it up to my doctor, and basically what his approach was to asininely deny me and basically tell me and preach to me that, cannabis is addictive, it's a bad drug, and, and we weren't even talking about cannabis as, with THC involved. We were just talking about CBD, which is legal to consume in the United States, by the way. So, it was really eye-opening for me that I was not going to get the help that I needed. And so that was when I really basically decided to take it on my own terms and start growing mushrooms on my own. And with that said, I have a whole article. Again, I would definitely recommend checking it out, spiritual.online. There's a whole blog where you can learn how to grow mushrooms yourself legally. There's spores online that you can purchase, and it is legal. I'm going to say this a few times because a lot of people don't actually know this. You can grow mushrooms. Mushrooms grow naturally on Earth. It is a natural substance it's a natural occurrence, okay? So there's not a whole lot of laws on like what is legal for mushrooms. So also do a lot of research on that, because I believe there are 2 states. Personally, I believe it's just 2 states where you can't actually order spores, but to each their own. Do your own thing. And again, this is not medical advice. This is not me condoning anything. This is just my personal experience. So I grew mushrooms, and I did the whole jar thing. I got a syringe from this company, the spore company, and I decided to grow my own mushrooms. It took about like 3 months or something like that to actually get them to their full capacity. And then I trimmed them, I dehydrated them, and turned them into honey butter. So what I did was like I ground them up into powder, and I put them in a jar with honey because honey is a natural preservative. And so I basically would take like little teaspoons at a time. Let me get rid of my cat real quick. Full disclosure, I did not actually get rid of my cat. I know I said that, but I just pushed him out the doggy door because for some reason he's an Egyptian god and he needs you to open the front door for him. So, but I went through this personal experience. I grew these mushrooms from scratch, did the whole jar thing. If you're not familiar, again, watch my other videos, because I believe I have a whole video too about mushroom growth on YouTube. I'm not really sure if it was taken down or anything. I'll have to get back to you on that, because I know that I took pictures, but I don't know if I did the whole video or if I actually uploaded it, because I didn't want to be flagged, because I've been flagged for a few other things on here. So, with that being said, you can still get the information again on my website, spiritual.online. And I went through this process. It's actually really affordable if you consider some of the medical drugs, because I was going back. I was prescribed Keppra by the doctor, the neurosurgeon, who basically told me that CBD was bad for me and it was going to get me addicted and stuff like that. So, instead he provided me with another addictive drug, Keppra, and I took it for like 1 or 2 days. Not 1 or 2. I think I took it for like basically a week, and it made me feel awful. It made me feel like a zombie. I did not feel myself. I felt even more depressed. I felt, because I got depression, PTSD, and anxiety from my seizures, and then that just sparked even more within me, because basically, I've never been really fond of pharmaceutical companies in their entirety, and because of their integrity based towards actual profits versus healing people and curing people of these actual disorders. You can't turn somebody who's cured into a consumer. You can't make a customer out of somebody who's perfectly healthy. So basically, that there's some moral integrity involved with that you have to question. So basically, I'm not really too fond of the pharmaceutical industry as an entirety. So that's my own personal standpoint. Do with that information what you want. But so going back, again, I was prescribed the Keppra. It didn't really work out for me. It has worked out for some people. Some people really do believe in that drug, and some people have much more incompatibilities with psychedelics, I believe, and then also there's seizures. There's something really unique about epilepsy is it varies between each individual. Right? So, like, we have to really understand that, just because it works for one person, it's not going to work for somebody else. So, that's why usually you're prescribed a certain dosage, you're recommended a certain dosage, and then, go through these medical examinations, and they test all these things for you. Not always, because a lot of that research is expensive, even for the medical companies. So, it's not really something that's done extensively like it should be, because again, everything is individual based. And that goes with mushrooms too. This is something I want to bring up because microdosing is very touchy. Like, if you really want to get into microdosing, you have to understand that you're not going to macrodose. So there's microdosing, which is very minuscule amounts. You do it over time, a long period of time or a short period of time, but you do it over time. You don't sit there and take like 3 to 4 grams and just like trip balls in your bed and look at all the cool pictures and stuff on the wall. No, you are basically not going to feel anything different cognitively. No, you do get a sense of euphoria and happiness, because like when I microdose, I'm actually really in a great mood. It uplifts my spirits. I think it triggers your serotonin receptors or something like that, but not like MDMA does. Again, I'm not a medical expert. I know MDMA just basically squeezes all of the serotonin out of your receptors, and it takes a little while for you to. So you have like an up, and then you have a down with like high doses or regular doses of MDMA. Now, this again is just personal research, personal studies. I mean, you know what I mean? Sorry, that was probably controversial, but it's really it triggers a lot of, or it activates a lot of your serotonin. So there's this really uplifting feeling, and then you have a down. You have like this down feeling right after, like the day after. So I don't really remember exactly what it's called, but like there's this sense of you have to wait, or you should wait till you have MDMA again if you're going to like take a whole dosage or whatever. And that's like, more for partying and having, this nice trippy experience. But, that's not what we're talking about. Microdosing is very specific. You have a small, even like smaller than a teaspoon amount of these mushrooms, and then you like put it in your tea, or you can have capsules. Is actually a much more popular one now. I definitely want to get into capsules myself, but what you do is you basically try to record the dosage that you have, and you journal this stuff, and then you take it, and you take it over time, and then there's therapy involved too. So you're not just doing the drug and then you expect great results. Sometimes I'm sure maybe there are individual like stories where that does work out. Don't get me wrong, but there is therapy involved, because we're trying to heal anxiety, we're trying to heal PTSD, and we're trying to heal depression, epilepsy. And I've actually done some research for autism. This is a brand new one, so do extensive research for this for autism involved. But I have seen some medical research where it's actually healed a lot of autism related symptoms. So just do again research. So with that being said, there's therapy involved. You journal all of these events. You journal your epilepsy, you journal your seizures, you journal the feelings, the emotions that you go through. And then there's something really, and this is what I was talking about just a moment ago before my cat disturbed us. My mushrooms, from my understanding, it's not like you have this giant mushroom. And maybe it has a little bit more to do with the size of the mushroom. I'm sure a younger mushroom is probably a lot more potent than a full-grown mushroom. Now, that being said, though, like, you can have, like, a gram or two and then get higher, like way bigger results, euphoric results, than a smaller dosage of mushrooms or a bigger dosage of mushrooms. because it really depends on the mushroom itself and what its own individual potency. This is something very specific about mushrooms in particular, but I believe that you could at least with either the honey thing, because you're mixing it in, you have like what is it, a base for the actual microdosing therapy, the actual drug. So it's not like you're just taking mushrooms by itself. There's actually like honey involved too. So you could have like a teaspoon and have like less mushrooms than what you would actually expect. And then again, you're not going to feel like, out there. You're not going to feel like you're on mushrooms. You're going to feel happy, you're going to feel a little bit of euphoria, but it's not going to be like hallucinogenic, it's not going to be completely psychoactive. So just understand that there's a big difference between microdosing, macrodosing, very different things. So with that, like, again, it's not really about the activation. So you really want to consider too that mushrooms are very, very specific, and they are an experience to be had. So I don't know if you ever did mushrooms like back in your youth where you were just like partying with your friends and stuff, but some of those trips that you have are really, really out there and really deep, and sometimes they can make a lot of your medical conditions even worse, your especially mental conditions, if you don't have anybody involved with your therapy. Like, you're not talking to anybody, you're being socially cut off from the rest of the world. I can really see that having much more effect on you from a psychoactive and psychology um, side of things. So I would really consider like consulting somebody, a medical professional, somebody who's been involved in this type of thing, like psychedelic therapy in general, even because a lot of it is very similar. Because hallucinogens, they can cause some really crazy experiences, especially if you're not really particularly sure how to microdose specifically, because you can get like these crazy trips and like be talking to some type of plant that has a face now. So like be really particular and be really cautious about how you approach this type of research, how you approach this type of thing. And even you can sign up for clinical trials. I'm on the website right now. I won't show you just because it's not going to look great. But you can go to clinical trials and you can like ask to sign up. Now, I know that that's not a guarantee that you're going to be on this type of research study, but it is important for you to at least, because you can go and look up this research yourself. Like, research is real, true scientific research after all of the trials, after it's all been examined by, government officials and such like that, medical experts, then it will be publicized. So that is something also to consider. Now, examining that type of research has its own background and things involved, so keep that in mind as well. However, I do recommend Reddit, because Reddit was actually a really great resource for me, because it went back down to the individual. And of course, again, this is not medical related. This is not medical research. I'm not a professional, obviously. Got all the goth stuff on. But like, there was a lot of people online talking about their experiences, and a lot of people had very, very similar experiences. So it was something to consider. It was something that was repetitive in nature, repetitive to understand, and so there has some consistency with it. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I believe in consistency. That is my purest form of knowledge and wisdom, is consistency. So if something is consistent with data and research and individual experience, then I am all for it. I want to do more research on it. I want to understand it better. So that being said, like, again, like, look up this type of stuff on your own. If you don't really, if there's a lot of, because there's a lot of mixed information, and there's going to be mixed information about it, because this is combative with pharmaceutical studies, pharmaceutical research. Now, I'm sure that if they are brilliant, I'm not sure if they are, and they don't necessarily consider putting profits before actual morality and integrity, then they would jump on the bandwagon and involve themselves financially with this sort of research. Now, that, I'm sure is its own thing, but it is a government system. MAPS is government related. Like none of this would actually happen if the government was not condoning it. So this is all, individual states have started to legalize. Like I believe Colorado was one, Oregon was one, California I believe was one. But these were like the first, and there's a bunch of other states that have actually started to legalize this type of research. Now that being said, it's not publicly available yet because it's still fresh, it's still new. So it's something to really consider and like talk about publicly so we can get more people on this movement in this wave. So again, I definitely recommend you sharing this video, liking this video, and subscribing to this channel if you want to hear more information about this, because I will talk about it even more and more as people become much more comfortable with it, because this is something that I truly believe in. It has helped me. I am going on a year without epilepsy seizures. I have not had a severe or aura seizures since my personal experience with mushroom microdosing. Now, I've also, I do want to put this out there too. I have lost jobs for personal reasons, and then also because I wasn't medically ready to actually have a full position. I was working in a restaurant basically. This is a personal story of mine, and I had a seizure. I had an aura seizure, so it wasn't a severe seizure where I fell on the ground and stuff. I was out of it. I was completely out of my mind, and I walked out of the restaurant in the middle of the day, drove home, mind you, and basically this was before my mushroom experience, and I basically had no idea what I was doing, and that has its own dangers alone, because I honestly was not even aware that I was behind the wheel at all, which is very scary to even think about. I haven't driven since then, thankfully. But yeah, so there's things that happen when you have aura seizures. You don't have much control over your mind and body, and you're just basically like doing things without even thinking about it. You basically go crazy. It's the most bizarre thing in the entire universe, and yeah, it's a very scary experience. Now that being said, since I did all of that microdosing, and I've done the therapy involved, I journaled, I did theta wave therapy, so I started listening to theta waves in my sleep to help me stay asleep and keep my mind calm. Because I don't know what goes on when you're dreaming, but sometimes you can have seizures while you're dreaming. That was actually a multitude of my experiences. I had more seizures in my bed than I actually had severe seizures. That was like me just falling asleep. And you understand, when you're actually having an aura seizure in your bed, because your brain feels like really, really big. It feels like it's convulsed, and you feel like this giant, giant migraine. It's worse than a migraine. I can't even really explain it to you. It's awful. It's an awful feeling. You usually pee yourself, and sometimes you vomit a lot, you get very nauseous, and you feel really awful basically. So there was a lot of that involved too with my experience, and I couldn't remember birth dates, I couldn't remember names, I couldn't remember like things that should really come as firsthand. I couldn't even remember my own birthday for a little while. Now that eventually faded away as I started microdose more and more, and then I got a job actually doing government stuff again. Well, I guess the other one was more of a private entity. It wasn't actually government. Government, the campaigning up in Portland, that wasn't government related. I mean, sort of, because we were contracted, but anyway, the thing is I got another job out here since then, and I was able to stick with that job, and I was actually able to multitask, which was like so healing for me, because I went through a lot of depression and PTSD because I wasn't able to remember things, and it made me feel like I wasn't capable of being a human again, basically, because I lost so much of my memory, I lost so much of my cognitive abilities, and it fell me into a giant pit of doom. And then since my healing, I've regained so much. I have regained my memory, and now this has mushrooms involved in its entirety too, because Paul Stamets, they have I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like the mushroom king, and I definitely recommend his channel if you want to learn more about mushrooms in their entirety, because mushrooms in general have so much abilities for your cognitive stability. Like they heal your memory, they improve brain function, they are just magical on their own, and they aren't magic mushrooms. They aren't psychedelic mushrooms. It's just cordyceps, lion's mane, and whatever. There's a plethora of different mushrooms involved. But basically, what I'm saying is, I took his like Paul Stamets. He has like his own brand of like mushroom capsules, and those were again not psychoactive, just regular mushrooms, cordyceps, and a blend of other mushrooms involved. I took those for a short period of time, so it was more so of my microdosing with golden cap spores, golden teacher spores. If you're not familiar with, you should definitely look this up because they're really great. It's much more popular strain of mushrooms for the psychedelic aspect. Those are the psychoactive mushrooms that I took. Golden cap spores. So, or golden cap mushrooms, I should say, because the spores are just the baby identity mushroom. Mushrooms are really interesting. If you want to learn more about that too, again, watch the interview I did with the paradigm shift because I go through a lot of, it's an hour-long video, don't get me wrong, but you can skip through to the meat and the chunk of it, and we're pretty consistent about what we're talking about because it is an interview. So thankfully it's it's easier to watch and consume. But I have a lot more that I said about the process of growing mushrooms in that video, and then again my blog as well, so you can actually get pictures and understand the cost related to mushroom growth and all of that stuff. And that will be again on my blog, on my website, spiritual.online. I will leave the link down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it brings some positive information to you, especially of epilepsy, especially if you've known seizures and you are wanting to do this healing on your own because medical drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, they're really expensive. I couldn't afford $200 capsules for the rest of my life every month because that's like I think it was like 30 or 60-day amount or dosage for the Capra pills is what they prescribed me. So I personally couldn't afford it. So that's another reason why I got involved in doing personal research and doing my own thing. So I hope this reaches out to the right people and you at least give this some type of thought process so you can do your own research and at least make it available in your brain and spread this information to other people so we can start getting a wave of people involved in this and thinking about this as a mainstream narrative, because we need more people involved in this because again we are combating with lobbyists and pharmaceutical companies and people who are on the hierarchy of how things are done in the United States. So I love you. I hope this reaches out to the right people. Again, please share this video so more information is available to the public because it helps me and it helps other people, and that is really my, it is my goal and aim to help people think about things, consider new things, and, have some freedom of cognitive function again, because it's important and imperative that you have like availability and access to these things because they should be free and you should be involved in having more research done for something that is worked out for so many people. And now that there's government research involved too, like there's obviously some background to this, there's definitely some backbone to all of this information. So consider it, think about it, please share, like, and subscribe. Love you. Bye.